All right, so today we're talking about the 1987 film Hellraiser, directed by Clive Barker. So it looks like he just did the first Hellraiser, but it went on to spawn, I believe, if Wikipedia serves me correct, 9 sequels. And I don't know if that's including the one that's like just about to come out now in 2022, but this is a franchise that I never dove into. I was never really a huge horror movie fan growing up. I think I'm definitely getting more into it now. And Hellraiser is just, as you can see here, I gave it a 3.5 stars. It's in that weird niche of movies where it's like, you really can't justify giving it a higher rating, but it was just like charming, fun, and campy. It has some really good ideas, but it does fall into some pitfalls of some horror tropes where you roll your eyes at some character decisions or some conveniences or something like that. But overall, the concept's just really fun, decently well executed, and it's one of those lower budget. Well, actually, I'm not too sure of the budget. Let me look that up right now. But it has the vibe of like it's in few locations. It doesn't seem like the most complicated thing to film, but because of that, it just has like a certain charm to it where it's like you can feel that behind the scenes, like so much love was put into it. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, people come together, they're filming this fun horror concept, and this is what happens. So it looks like £1 million is the budget here, and it grossed worldwide 14 million US dollars. So that's an amazing return on investment right there. And yeah, I think that there's definitely a few examples, none that I can remember off the top of my head, but it's low budget. Man, I guess Saw is an example. Low budget, cool concept. It's like you can tell the execution isn't like 100% super polished or everything, but it's still a fun ride nonetheless. So without going into spoilers yet, I'll give a quick spoiler-free rundown of the film Hellraiser. So the film Hellraiser is centered around this cube. I forget what the actual cube. It's just like it's a puzzle box. And when you play with this puzzle box and rearrange it in a certain way, it opens the doors to hell. And then these sadomasochistic creatures come out and they try to take your soul. Let's just say that. Just have their way with you. And it's a horror film that is very campy. The effects definitely hold up. Don't hold up. Sorry. I meant to say don't hold up. Some of like the just like magic effects, the actual prosthetic makeup effects, there's some that hold up. Like the actual costumes are just very well designed and very, very fun. I mean, Pinhead is an iconic character, and I didn't really have too many complaints with this costume execution wise. I think that like just the head looks sick, but then the body is just like, it's nothing crazy. It's just a bit underwhelming to see this crazy head, which is like this normal dude's body and everything. Whereas some of the other creatures are just like so far out there and everything. The costumes and actual character design, great. Like that's exactly what you need for this kind of movie. But what I'm more talking about is maybe like the gore special effects. And you can tell if somebody has like a scratch on their face or something, you can like see the flakiness of some of the effects, some of the special effects that were applied there. And you could feel like you could just like pull it off and everything. But in general, it's not too reliant on that. It's kind of the concept of these creatures coming into the real world that sells it more, and like those effects really don't need to hold up for it still to be a good ride. I'm trying to think of a movie that I can compare it to, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. But like I said before, it's a decently low budget, fun premise, and I think that not just horror fans will like this film. Myself, I'm not like the most hardcore horror fan. I'm getting into it more now. It's the kind of movie that, yes, there are some visually gruesome things happening, and these characters are going through this like supernatural occurrence that's very scary for the scenario, but it's not one of those movies that's like gonna have needless jump scares. It feels like a thriller, and it aligns with my own personal genre that I've coined, just the cool concept genre. It doesn't need to be super jump scary, or doesn't need to have like the strongest narrative all time, but it's just like the concept is fun to think about and just analyze like it had a fun like depth to the backstory of all the characters, or at least it alluded to, and I'm sure the other movies go more into depth with that, but it just had so much character in the movie that I think it was just It was a good time, and yeah, like I said, I hope that kind of explanation kind of justified like my feeling where it's like you're not gonna give it like a 9 or 10 out of stars, or yeah, 9 or 10 out of 10, but it's one of those movies where it's like, yeah, it's so charming. You don't hate it. You think of it as a good movie, and you have good memories of it, and hey, that's that. And so yeah, I didn't know that there were so many sequels to this movie. It's a franchise that I just never got into right away. I'm trying to see. Let me look up all the sequels right now. I know there's one coming out in 2022. I thought it was out right now at the time of this recording, but I'm not too sure. So, Hellraiser sequels. So, I guess so. It started in 1987, and then the most recent one was in 2018. So it's been going pretty consistently, and I really haven't heard much about this franchise at all, or any of the other movies. Like, I don't have any memory just being around theaters my entire life of seeing like a Hellraiser movie coming out and being in theaters. I guess now it's kind of like, yeah, direct to like some streaming service, but like even like 2011 or 2018, I have no memories of any of these Hellraisers coming out. But it feels like I don't actually know. I can't verify like how quality these sequels are. I've never like seen them myself, but just from like a horror franchise perspective, knowing a few like about Saw, it really capitalizes off the first film's success, and just it kind of devolves. That's just kind of what these franchises do, and it kind of feels like that's the vibe of this film because so many have been just pumped out. So let's see here, 3.3 for Hellraiser 2. That's really, I thought it was going to be way worse. So let me just go along the line here. So Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. Oh, Pinhead. I feel like, yeah, just like his head is so cool, but then you see his body and it's like, oh, he's just like a dude. So what is it? 2.7. Yeah, not the best. Hellraiser Bloodline. So Hellraiser Bloodline 2.4. Yeah, we're definitely getting into a bit of a, not the highest ratings here. Hellraiser Inferno 2.3. Not great. Let's see, what do we got next? Hellraiser Hellworld. These titles are just, they're something. And I believe this guy, I think I read on Wikipedia that he did 7 of the sequels or something like that. So, oh, Evil Goes Online. Gamers who participate in an online role-playing game called Hellworld are invited to invited to a rave whose host plans to show them the truth behind the Cenobite mythos. Oh boy. Oh, 1.8. Absolutely brutal. That's hilarious. But that logline is just, that's such a funny logline. And Hellraiser Hellseeker. So this one's 2002. And yeah, not great. Ashley Lawrence still in there. Yeah, Kirsty's still in there. Wait, so this one was 2005. So what do we got? We got the most recent one besides the 2022 one is Hellraiser Judgment. Let me just look up that real quick. Judgment. Oh, I spelt it wrong, didn't I? Or do I need the colon in there? Letterboxd is very okay, I'm just going to look up Hellraiser and see what comes up. So we got, here, I'll just look at this list here. Hellraiser. Ooh, somebody. I don't know if this is like a, oh, yeah. Inferno is the best one. Fight me. Inferno has a 2.3. Hey, you do you, random Letterboxd user. But, so what am I looking at? Judgment and Revelations are the 2 most recent ones. So 2018, 1.8. Directed by Gary J. Turncliffe. Oh, man. Yeah, this franchise definitely suffers from this horror film franchise-itis. Oh, my God. 1.2. The Return of Pinhead. Yeah, this is just capitalizing off of the success of the... Oh, man. Yeah. So it looks like that the franchise did go a bit off the walls. Hopefully this 2022 one kind of brings it back down to like a decent film in general. But I'm not planning on venturing into any of those sequels at all. But I'm sure it explains some mythos, which might be fun to look at. But alas, okay, so we'll get more into the actual talking about this film here. So it was based on a book called, it was a book that was written by the writer-director Clive Barker, which is cool. Fun to see that he wrote this book and then came to direct the film. But it's called The Hellbound Heart. And I think there are a few differences that I looked up. I'm not going to go into them in details or anything. It's just cool that that he did that. So, Hellraiser. We'll go into some more spoilers at this point. Some things that I like, some things that maybe I didn't like. But I think that, oh man, where do I start here? So, I really did like the themes of this film. If I'm going on like the cool concept genre that I like to talk about, the themes of sadomasochism and like these people coming in, these people who are unlocked by the Centibites, they're called, unlocked by this puzzle box. They come into the world, and like the whole room around just turns into like this weird torture chamber, and them using their, I forget the exact quote is, but it's like, your pain is our pleasure. But the setup to this movie was very interesting with Frank, I believe his name is, and he like buys the puzzle box off somebody. He opens, or he tries to unlock it with all the candles going around. The electricity effects really not the best and everything, but so he does that because, and it feels like at first he does start to take pleasure in the pain, which is like interesting. It's always an interesting concept theme when it's used in movies, because when I watch this, I bet not many people have had this phenomenon that I've had, because I watched it after I watched Crimes of the Future by David Cronenberg, and I guess anybody, you would have to have not seen this movie, watched Crimes of the Future, then watch this movie for this to occur. But it's like, Crimes of the Future is all about surgery is the new sex, and I guess in Crimes of the Future, the actual pain that people feel is diluted and they barely feel pain, but it gets into that like masochistic themes. And so I just had this weird thing where I'm just thinking about relating it to Crimes of the Future and all the surgery scenes in that film, and just like, it is an interesting concept. It's just so uncomfortable at the same point, and it's fun that these Centibites really just personify that theme of, sadomasochism. It's like, it's such a weird thing to say that it's fun that this movie personifies sadomasochism, but it is just an interesting concept to dive into this horror movie, because I guess horror movies are all about the senses, and I guess pain and pleasure. Those are the two, like, if you wanted to just make a dichotomy of senses, those are the two right there. And yeah, this movie deals with those themes, and it's just, they're themes that are just fun to work with in this movie. And so we get Frank, who just got absolutely obliterated by this box, but somehow manages to escape. And he's just like chilling in, I guess it's after, how did this happen? Did she get the box? No. So let me do a refresher on what actually happened in here. Right. So we had Frank, who is now just absolutely obliterated by this puzzle box. And apparently he's just like chilling in this old house that his family used to own. And then after that, we have Larry and Julia. They are married and they move into this old house. And then when they move into the house, they just find it completely disgusting. The kitchen is just maggots everywhere. They go upstairs and they find this really gross looking bed area, and there's no sign of Frank or anything, but they assume that he might have been there for a bit. And then we find out via Julia's perspective that he is actually so her, Julia, and Frank, they go into this room after Frank cut his hand moving some furniture, and the blood falls on the floorboards, and then they both leave the room, and this blood, which is what Frank feeds off of and regains his body back from, is what makes him whole again. So he just started off as like, I don't even know what his form was before this, but yeah, he starts building his body based on the blood of others. And that was a fun scene. It's like another one of those where it's like, they must have had a lot of fun on set, just shaking the floorboards, making this scene of like the house going crazy and him getting like reincarnated. But the reincarnation scene was really, really cool. You could tell that they filmed things in reverse, and you had like something melting, and then they put it in reverse, and it looked like it was just like magically building itself to make like these organs that were going to make up his body. And so I thought that was a lot of fun. It was definitely very like sensational and stylized and silly and everything, but that's kind of just the vibe of this movie in general. And so yeah, so we got Frank who just wants to rebuild his body. And so him and Julia had an affair previously, and then Julia doesn't really like her life with Larry. And it's very plain to see when she's like, when they're watching TV, Larry's watching boxing, really into it. He's like very into it, more than the average boxing fan, I'd say. But Julia doesn't love her life, and she had an affair with Frank previously. And when she realizes that this reincarnated flesh, bloody blob, after being initially freaked out, is Frank, then she decides, yeah, Frank fulfills her desires sexually, and she just decides to help her. That her life is so boring that she'd rather go out of her way to feel to be with Frank, have that danger and those sensations, rather than live her normal life. So, good for you. And then she goes out and seduces random men, brings them back to her house, and then Larry feeds on their blood and rebuilds his body back, which some of those scenes were just fun, with those guys going back and be like, I've never done this before. Or it's like, oh, isn't this how this is supposed to go? And I think she played off the nervousness very well. I don't know. It was just a fun premise. It's like, yeah, she's just luring people back to refuel Frank's corpse with their blood. It's one of those things in the movie where it's like, you don't need to think about it. It's just a funny concept. It's not really horror, but it is horror. It's not really horror. It's not really scary. Okay, I keep using horror and scary like simultaneously, but it's not really scary, but it's just a fun ride to go along. And so as Frank is building back up his, body, then we have Kirsty, who becomes the main character at a certain point, because a lot of the times we were following Julia, and then Kirsty, Larry's daughter, not with Julia, I believe, she comes into the fray, and then she finds the puzzle box. And so she finds the puzzle box, she opens it up, and then she gets freaked out. She goes to the hospital. She like blacks out, wakes up in the hospital, and it was a fun scene where it's like it opens, the hospital wall opens up, and then she's just like running down this hallway, and then this monster, this floating flesh monster, is chasing her, and it's like that moment of her running back down the hall back to the hospital room and the monster chasing her felt like an eternity. It felt like we just kept cutting back to the same shots over and over. And it's like, it does have that feel of low budget horror movie where it's like you're just like grasping and you're just elongating these like tense situations for as long as humanly possible. But I found it a bit annoying. But okay, I won't give it too much flack. I did like this movie. It was fun and campy and everything. But yeah, and so she escapes, and then all the Cenobites come. Pinhead, he comes in. He's like, hey, you're our new victim. Ready to feel some pain, but hey, it should be pleasurable. But ready to feel some pain. And then she makes a deal with the devil, and it's like, hey, I know this guy who actually, oh yeah, so basically what happened was like, she saw Julia cheating, she went upstairs and met flesh-ified Frank and was freaked out, and yeah, ended up in the hospital. She's like, okay, I know of this guy, he got away from you, I can show you where he is, and you can get him back. And they're like, okay, fine, we'll do that. And then she goes back to the house to what she thinks is her dad, but it's Frank, who off-screen killed Larry and just stuck his face on his face, which I thought was hilarious. It's just like so many moments of this movie where it's like, that's just crazy that this is happening right now. Like just a flesh guy eating people's blood to regain back his body, putting another face on his face. That was, man, crazy stuff happening here. And then in a twist of events, as everything's happening, Frank ends up just absolutely shanking Julia and be like, hey, sorry, I guess we're not meant to be together. And it's like, yeah, we kind of saw that. I mean, Frank's character is so just like, he just gives off the vibe. He just like this macho man. He doesn't care about anything. He'll trick anybody for anything. And so, yeah, I'm still like trying to wrap my head around. It's like, why did he do that specifically? But it kind of just feels like, yeah, he's just an asshole, and he really never actually cared for her, just looking out for himself. So whatever. And then there's this whole sequence of her hiding in one of the rooms upstairs, and then Larry's around, just like slowly going through the room, searching, just like a horror moment that's stretched out yet again. And then we finally get the Cenobites find Frank and bring him back to his torture dungeon hell. But hey, maybe he enjoys it at this point. He finally figured out how to make pain into pleasure. But I feel like it's a movie where I really admire the topics, not as in they're discussing them in a deep way. It's just fun to deal with these themes of the senses, the pain and the pleasure, and just some of the just like crazy moments that happen in this movie. Like there are definitely some like gruesome imagery. You have some shots of like people's hands, like Frank's hands as he's like regaining his body, just shoving into people's torsos and like getting all bloody and everything. There's a lot of blood in the movie, but like I don't see any of the gore is really that gratuitous. There's some like hammer to the head that you just don't see. It's off screen. It's like just like if you see me right now, it would be like boom, and then you just know that happened, and then they just have blood on their face and everything. But apparently, if Wikipedia serves me correct, that the MPAA was going to give it an X rating, but then some scenes were cut to make it an R instead. And that it says here, yeah, the first hammer murder, there was a close-up of the hammer in the victim's head. It's like, that was too much, really? I feel like the censorship has definitely got a lot looser nowadays, because I just watched Hostel, and that's just like the most brutal. I mean, I actually don't know what it's rated, but it's just like crazy. Just like one of the most violent movies I've seen. But yeah, I guess back in the 80s, maybe it was different, because I feel like those type of things you would see in horror movies nowadays more regularly with an R rating. But alas, it would have been fun to see kind of more of the gore with this, just because it's like, it's not like scary gore in this movie. It's just like, as along the same vein of like, yo, it's crazy that this dude stuck his dead brother's face on his face. It's like, it's just crazy. It would just add to the craziness. Be like, yeah, that hammer just like absolutely destroyed that person's head. And it just adds to just like the spectacle of the gore in this movie. But it's campy, so it's not really like that scary to begin with. But yeah, Hellraiser, it was just a lot of fun. It's just I don't really care to dive into the franchise at all. Oh, I did want to talk about the ending actually, because I loved the ending. I think that it was hilarious that they go throw away the puzzle box. I think it was a bit like just like, okay, roll your eyes, like action movie ending where it's like, oh, we can magically bring you guys back into this puzzle box if I just twist it in the right way, and oh, got you guys are electrified back in the box, sorry. But the ending, so they throw it into a fire, and then this weird homeless man that's been watching them like the whole movie comes through the fire, grabs it, transforms into like a skull dragon, and flies away. I thought that was just so sick. I don't know what it means, but it was just so cool. I was like, maybe it means like they never escaped the hell world that was released, or maybe it's like they were in a hell world to begin with. Maybe it's a commentary saying that the world sucks and we're living in hell, and that these creatures are always roaming, and it's not just the puzzle box. I don't know. I'm sure there's some lore to it, but I thought it was just like absolutely insane that it just ended with this bone dragon. It just adds to the spectacle. Like I was saying, it's just like, in conclusion, I'll say the spectacle of this movie, of just like some of the classic horror tropes are there, like, you know, the bad makeup, the limited locations, low budget, the effects that are just like not the greatest. But then the spectacle of the gore, the actual concepts that's happening, the actual themes of sadomasochism, and then just like crazy stuff happening, like a face being on another face, and this flesh man getting his body back, and then a dragon at the end. I was just like, I was loving it. It's like, it's just such a good like popcorn horror movie that's like not really that scary. So it's like a lot of people can, it's like, it's a really, really good October movie. And I watched it on September 30th actually, so I didn't actually verge into October. But it's just like one that I think people who maybe are very scared of horror movies could still very much enjoy, because it's not really that scary. It was just a lot of fun, and I enjoy the concepts behind it. And yeah, that's all I really have to say about Hellraiser. I'm very glad I watched it. It's one that, it's like, Pinhead is a guy that I've known, not an actual guy that I've known. It's just a character that I've known of for a long time, and I never dived into actual Hellraiser as a movie, and I'm very glad that I did. It was fun. It's now a staple in my mind as a nice Spooktober film, and yeah, very happy that I watched it. It was a good time. So I hope that Hellraiser 2022 is good. From the trailer that I watched, it was all right, but I always hope for good things. You gotta hope for the best. So next week, Audition is a movie that I've just been putting off for no good reason for quite some time now. I've wanted to watch it for like months and months, and every time I'm about to press play on it, I just like find something else that just like pricked my interest. I never went into it, but I'm very much looking forward to watching Audition.